starting point or something? We'll just dive into this. Hello, welcome to our Insights for Independent Creators panel. My name is Charlotte Fullerton McDuffie. I had the good pleasure to moderate our lovely cast of characters up here. Wow, this is a large panel. I am just going to let people, starting with you, introduce themselves in something a little bit relevant to today's panel topic about yourself, and then we'll jump in. So go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me. No.
I knew it was coming. I knew it.
My name's Hannibal Tabu. I won the 2012 Top Cow Talent Hunt. I write the BiPal for Comic Book Resources. I have a weekly webcomic on operative.net called Inner Project Torrent. I'm a jerk, and most people loathe me. So.
Indeed.
Hi, my name is Eric. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Eric Dean Seaton. I'm a television director and creator of a graphic novel series, Legend of the Mantamaji. It's an independent comic book, and we also have a live-action short, which is showing in the Comic-Con Film Festival tomorrow at 2:30.
Excellent. All right.
I'm Russell Nohelty. I run the publishing company Wannabe Press and host the twice-weekly podcast, The Business of Art, which helps demystify business for artists, creators, and other author types.
My name's Robert Roach. I work in the entertainment industry as a storyboard artist, concept designer and such. I also publish a couple of titles. One is Menthu, and new stuff. Thank you. Thank you much. New stuff from it coming out in September and running through January. I also did an award-winning book called The Roach. Won the inaugural. Thank you. That one kicks ass. It won the inaugural Glyph Award for rising stars, and other than that, at least my wife loves me.
My name is Nilah Magruder. I am the creator of the webcomic M.F.K, which was the winner of the Dwayne McDuffie Award for Diversity last year. My first picture book is coming out in November called How to Find a Fox, and during the day I am a storyboard revisionist at Disney Television Animation.
Woohoo!
My name is Geoff Gerber, and I'm lucky enough to be president of Lion Forge Comics, which is an African-American owned comic book company, comic book publisher that is trying to create avenues for creators who are underrepresented so that everyone can see themselves represented when they go into a store. I started in comics doing comic book litigation as a lawyer for Image Comics and have worked with independent creators ever since.
Excellent.
And we do need the people who protect our creative interests, so believe me when I say I'm so glad you're up here going to be able to spend some information to people.
Excellent. All righty. I just want to get a feel for who we have in the audience here and what kind of things you want to hear most about. I have an idea for how we're going to focus it, but are there people here? Oh,
What's your whole resume?
fine. I'm not going to start with my resume. Well, I'm going to bring that up as we talk about it, all right? I'm Charlotte Fullerton McDuffie, and the Dwayne McDuffie Award, of which Nilah was the inaugural winner, is named after my late husband in his honor. But you're going to make me cry up here. And I might as well use that as a transition. I should have ended with that and introduced myself as I'm an animation writer, video game writer, children's book writer, comic book writer, producer. Anything kids. And because of this panel allowing me to speak and having the topic be independent creators, and Hannibal being the wise guy that he is, mentioning the short film Troops that friends of mine and I made a Star Wars parody years ago, and we can use this as a launching point into the actual topic for the panel, which is not me. Independent creators like us back then with high-8, basically home video equipment, in 1997 premiered our short Star Wars parody, actually a cops parody set in the Star Wars universe, Troops, that still holds up pretty well. Did all the special effects ourselves, $1,500 for location permits and food. I mean, it was really just labor of love. And I think I wanted to ask in the audience, are there people here who are interested in getting into comics industry, video game, making your own short films? Do you have any particular interest in mind that we want to lean things towards? Published comics as opposed to online, or are you just bursting with ideas and you want to have an outlet of any kind? All of it. Excellent. Okay, cool. That being the case, I think I wanted to ask if you were, and we can sort of ping pong around, if you were starting out today now and you were sitting in this audience, because I know the technology's changed a lot. In talking about my friends and I doing Troops years ago, didn't have the internet. It was dial-up, and we did. But back in the old days, it took all night to download. I mean, really. Now you've got YouTube. You've got all these resources. What would you, if you were sitting out in the audience today, how would you think? How would you tell these people to take that first step? Okay, I have an idea. Maybe I can draw. Maybe I can write. Maybe a little bit of both. Maybe a lot of both. What's that first step?
I think I'm not sure where everyone else stands, but I never have been hired to do anything. I've never written for a television show. I've never had a book published by another company in print. I've literally built my company one person at a time by providing value to the people that I have at incredible value. So we expect to give 10 times value for what you guys pay. And that is, to me, where you start. Most people say, well, I'll start talking to people, I'll start building an audience, I'll start making friends with people once I have a book done. And that is way too late. The barrier to entry to selling books is that you have great content. If you wait until you have great content to start the process of building an audience, you are way, way, way behind. So to answer your question, what I would do is I would find the niche that I wanted to talk to. The one I use a lot is haunted houses. This works for fiction books or nonfiction books. If you know you have a book, a fiction book, romance, set in a haunted house, you can start going into haunted house forums months before. Start talking. Have a blog. Seek out
your audience online.
Exactly. Start building a blog about other haunted houses. Start building a mailing list about cool haunted houses around the country. You literally have to have no finished content at all in order to do this. You can start building, and then the people that are coming to your site, signing up for your mailing list, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to be interested in haunted houses if you have a book about haunted houses. And if that's the feature of the book, and if you provide value and they like your writing, they're very likely to give you a shot. Because at this stage, right now, where y'all are, a lot of people on this panel were at one point, you're not selling the book or the project nearly as much as you're selling yourself. You and your brand are synonymous. Maybe one day your brand will speak for itself, but right now, where you stand, all you have is selling you. And if you can sell you by showing you're passionate about something, it will go a huge way to building that audience when you have something to sell them.
That's good. I don't have anything.
No, okay, perfect. All right, panel's over. No, so that's an excellent, not an excellent starting point, but an excellent segue into, so you want to set up a website that shows your interest in a particular topic.
That looks good.
That looks professional.
So this is
professional.
Because this is
you need a clearinghouse of some kind. You can, Twitter account, all these ways
Spell
to
things
reach.
correctly.
And make it look good. Like most people undervalue graphic design. They undervalue design at the beginning of their career, and it's not until they've gotten to a certain level that they realize that thing about book covers, and don't judge a book by its cover, well, to me, I only judge a book by its cover at first. Because if you can't do the effort to market your book with a book cover and spend a couple of $100 making a book cover that's cool, there's no chance you properly edited your book. There is no chance that your art interior is good. So that packaging and that design of your website matters. Any trained monkey can get you to a site. You pay enough money, you'll get drive traffic to the site. But in order to keep traffic there, that is the key.
Right, and
Wow. And you've got something to sell us right after this, right now. And it's web
I could
design.
also-
No, actually, that's an
If I
excellent,
could also
somebody,
add-
I was going to ask, somebody who has a lot of experience on the web and building a brand and getting the attention of some large eyes and ears.
Yeah, like just on the note of graphic design, like good and professional does not mean flashy. It can be simple, it can be clean as long as it's functional and easy to use and not cluttered, not messy. So if you have no graphic design experience and you're building a website, don't get hung up on that. It can still look professional and also simple.
As well, one thing that's important is consistency. Well, I used to work in the newspaper business, and the fact that newspapers were able to run for so long was because they were always there. You always knew when they were coming out. So if I don't have 3 or 4 tweets a day, or if I don't have content in the channel, people will forget me. And if they forget me, nobody's going to buy this brand that I've worked so hard to get them interested in, like Russell's talking about. So I believe in a great deal of consistency. So if you go to Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, it's all going to be Hannibal Tabu. It's not going to be, you're not going to see an underscore or umlaut or anything funny. I have a 12-year-old daughter who says, underscores are cool, you just put them in randomly. I'm like, that's crazy and you've never made any money. So I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. Consistency in that regard, making it, the more work somebody has to do to find you, to give you their money, the harder it's going to be for you to get that money. And
Even people that like you, right? Like even people that like you don't
even
want to,
people
are too lazy to give you money. So people that don't like you or don't know you are definitely not going to give you money if you make it hard.
I've got all the same name, and my mom can't find me, and she really most of the time likes me. So.
While we're talking, you guys are doing a fantastic job transitioning, and I didn't even tell you what the bullet points were going to be. Either I'm extremely predictable, or we all know the process very well. If you are a writer but you don't draw, or you're a graphic artist and you don't necessarily write narrative strongly, do you suggest going online to search for creative partners, or going among your personal friends, people from school, I equate it to dating, and I think you guys probably all understand sort of why this sort of it probably has as much of a hit and miss chance online and in real life for artists and writers.
We've done this panel for more than a minute, and one thing that a guy who helped found the Antidote Trust used to like to do here, because he was a writer, would say, okay, everybody who's a writer and has something they want to do, raise your right hand. Everybody who's an artist and is looking to work with somebody, raise your left hand. Everybody look around the room and
meet each other. Yeah. Shake hands.
I say that, and I say, yes, go to those different forums. That's cool. Start with who you know and what you know best, because there are a lot of tragic stories from Craigslist. Mm-hmm. So start with what you know best and go out from there. My dad used to always say, start simple, son, and go toward complex. So start simple, then build toward complex if needed, and always behave with professionalism. Everybody has bills to pay, and I'll just talk about me for a moment. If I take an out-of-pocket job, I'm going to charge less because I understand what it's like to come out of my own pocket. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, I got to get paid. My wife has to eat. Mm-hmm. And so someone who comes to me and tries to sell me on their labor of love that I'm supposed to love because it's their labor of love is not treating me professionally. Mm-hmm. So keep professionalism in mind in how you approach someone and how you approach your own work.
The dating metaphor that you put forth is very apt, because there's been a lot of times, I remember I paid a guy $400 to work on this project, and halfway through he had an existential crisis and disappeared and moved to Utah for 3 years. And I didn't hear from him at all. I'm not making that up. He totally went nuts on me. And then years later, he runs into me at Comic-Con. He's like, dude, I don't know what happened to me, blah, blah. I'm like, where are my pages? Mm-hmm. He's like, well, I'm like, where are my pages?
Money pages.
And I still don't have those pages. I'm still pretty spicy about that. But there are also serendipitous moments. I was this guy Larry Stroman, who did this book Tribe 100 years ago. He was putting a post up about how he wanted to work on things, and a lot of people, writers, started coming in. Oh, I'd work with you, and I was one of them. And this artist from my hometown of Memphis saw me. He was like, "Well, if you're looking to work with somebody, what about me?" I'm like, "Let's start talking." And we found each other to be very simpatico. We were able to create a business relationship that was mutually beneficial, and now we're running a creative studio partially together. And it's really, it's rare to find situations like that. I know one of the panelists on the last panel, Jeff Thorne and Todd Harris, they've been thick as thieves forever, but everybody won't find that perfect collaborator. So you're going to go through a lot of hookups. You're going to go through a lot of, sometimes you wake up by yourself sticky and unhappy. These things will happen. But it's part of the process, and if you're serious about doing the work, if you have to do the work, then you won't let that sort of thing stop you, and you're going to, dress yourself up and go out to the bar the next night.
Parenthetically, man, you mentioned Jeff and Todd in Genre 19. Mm-hmm. The reason they did the Menthu story for number 7 is because I introduced it to them, and that was the way they paid me back. So.
Oh, there you go.
Well, I think that people don't think of a long enough time horizon when they do a book. So when I say a long enough time horizon, I mean I did this book and I paid, around $8,000 of art for this book, about 100 pages and 96, so about 10 grand actually. This book gets me work. This book gets me people. This book gets me on panels at Comic-Con today because I invested 6 years ago and another 10 grand, 15 grand into this book 5 years ago. And now people look at me and there's absolutely no doubt that when they look at this book that they take me seriously. And most people, when they first do a book, they just want to do a book, which is fine. But once you start wanting to take yourself seriously, these books and working with professionals and having something that looks as good as Marvel and DC, and I will put my books up against any book that's ever existed in any format, and it will win 90% of the time. And I'm so confident in that that's what I say at my booth. And if I'm wrong, I will give you a refund.
And you're available for infomercials anytime. No, sorry.
Right? So, you think about, most people think of, I can't make comics for 1 year. Like the first year, I don't make money in comics. But if you bought a McDonald's, you wouldn't think about that $1 million investment in a 1 year term. You'd be thinking about it in a 10, 20, 30 year term. So if you start thinking about your career in a longer time horizon, you can make a lot of money in comics as long as you put the money forth up front. If you have a crappy product, no one's going to buy it. If you have a great product, people will buy it as long as you know where to sell it.
So this is an example I wasn't expecting, but I'm going to go with it. When you talk about publishing your first book more of as a calling card than for revenue, you weren't necessarily expecting to get the money that you say. It's not like a lottery ticket where you're saying, okay, I'm going to be a millionaire after this. It's really the very first step. Rather than handing somebody a business card, you say, here is my work, and this is what you will get if you work with me.
I was willing to lose every dollar on this first book to get a publisher on board. We had a couple, fell through, and I went and published it myself. And that book got me this book, and that book got me another book, and that book got me on panels. That book got me speaking. That book got me a podcast. That book got me everything. So that if you think about things, like you said, as a calling card, I'll lose money on anything, but you can only make something once. You can sell it for the rest of your life.
Excellent. That's actually a very good slogan. You should have that on a T-shirt.
It is.
And sell them to us.
It's actually for my personal website.
I actually want to, and backtrack to, we were talking a little bit about online and also about self-financing and things. Kickstarter and Indiegogo and these kind of things that people do for passion projects now at a very high level. Have any of you had any specific experience with that, or positive or negative, really, that you'd want to share with people? Because I think the people in the audience here, and myself included, that's definitely an avenue that's available to you guys now starting out that I only wish we had, even back in the Troops days. Again, that was, obviously we couldn't make any money off of that because we didn't own Star Wars. It was completely a labor of love, everybody working for free, and it was an attention getter when we were like, gosh, if somebody, only people, knew who we were, we could do something really cool. No one's going to just hand you money and say, I don't know you, but here, have $1 million, make some TV shows, make some movies. You really do have to put yourself out there on a limb financially or otherwise. But now with Kickstarter, you are not necessarily sinking only your own money into this, so it's good in that way, financially liberating, but it's also, now you've got all these people on your back that are, you know, in addition to fans that may be waiting that you may have contacted online, you've built a fan base where you don't have a product yet. Now you're going to, I assume, leverage that into getting them to donate towards your campaign. Correct me if I'm wrong, and interrupt me anytime, guys.
I just don't want to dominate and answer every question.
Please.
I was going to talk. I was a part of the Watson Holmes Kickstarter for that project, and you know, at the time, you know, when they say, "Oh, we'll put you on there," and when they get to this stretch goal, which we're certain we're going to get, your story will be. I'm like, whatever. And then it leads to me being in a Starbucks for an hour and a half signing things to send out to Kickstarter backers because that was the reward that happened. The problem with a lot of people, they think that Kickstarter is, you know, this shortcut, and if you ever go, and he's too shy to say, but Russell teaches this thing called Free Kickstarter University, right? Or Kickstarter.
That's part of my podcast.
Yeah, and he talks about the machinery, how you have to build the audience to get them engaged so they'll even care about the Kickstarter. Because most people will look at your thing and they'll be like, I don't know you, I'm not interested in you, I'm not going to give you any money. You know, you say the same thing to a lot of panhandlers on the street. So with that in mind, you have to build up yourself as a brand. In the last panel, Brandon Easton talked about your online presence, about how you present yourself online so you're a person that people want to be involved with. They want to support you. So people see the fact that my kids are really cute. They're like, oh, I want to give him some money so those kids can eat. Yes, you do, because those kids are adorable and they eat a lot. They do. So, and you know, or I don't shy away from issues of social justice. You know, you can call me a social justice warrior, which would be better than being a social injustice warrior, I guess. But, and I'm very clear about who I am. So the people who support me and the people who are interested in my product come to support this brand that I'm building. If the products are consistent with that, then I'm fine. Now, I had to write a comic book called New Money for Canon Comics. I was hired to write it. And it was basically like Entourage where everybody's rich. Yeah. So there were some very misogynistic things in there. There were some very stupid, but they were all things that actually happened, for one, and he paid me to do it, for two. So would I have my daughters read it? Of course not. But it was the work that I was hired to do. And if I want to be serious about writing things, the things I write for myself, I can hold to my principles. The things somebody pays me for, hey, you know, I go to work, I do the job, I go home, I go and mind my business. So in that, with Kickstarter and with crowdfunding, you have to realize that this isn't some piggy bank that you can dip into. There's as much work in building the audience to get that as there would have been, in many cases, to pour the cash into it yourself.
In almost every launch, that's called, or I call it, you got to put money or put deposits into the Goodwill Bank so you can withdraw money from the Goodwill Bank when it's time to launch your project. But you're right. In fact, most people believe that most people like you or hate you, but in truth, about 10% of people like you, about 10% of people hate you, and about 80% of people couldn't give a crap about you. And your job is to get the 80% of people that don't give a crap about you and get like 1% of 1% of 1% to do care about you, and then you have an audience of about 70,000 people. You can make a pretty nice career on that.
So let's transition away a little bit from the online world, and I wanted to get Geoff into the conversation, mainly for myself, because it's a question I've been wanting to ask, about the publishing business, and you mentioned a little bit about working in print before, and I think, you know, all of us older folks remember these things called newspapers that used to show up on the doorstep in the morning, and then you had to wait for that every time you didn't get to just go on Twitter and find out what's going on in the world. You had to, you know, wait till it was handed. But now that the newsprint and even comic books in print are, you know, something you can hold in your hands, has largely, you know, well, it's certainly dropped in the volume of distribution it once was, certainly 20 years ago. But are you at Lion Forge looking towards an online presence for your content, or what are you allowed to share this kind of, just getting a feel of what kind of where publishing is now and where it's going?
Lion Forge was started when the iPad came out with an eye to be a digital first or maybe a digital-only publisher, right? The rapid expansion and the ease of distribution, no cost, no return. All you have to do is be able to create the content and get it out there. Sure, you're going to have to market it, but your costs of production and distribution are significantly reduced. And so we started with a goal of being online. Heading into 2013, digital comics as a percentage share of the market for comics started to plateau. It's fully plateaued now, and to a certain extent is shrinking a little bit. So it's, if you're happy and think that it's going to be, worth your while to sell what you create to 20% of the potential audience for what you're creating, then, go ahead and do it. But it means that everybody else out there is going to be, out there trying to sell to 100% of the folks. And when you're trying to figure out how the marketplace and the, the supply and demand curve works to be able to make a living doing this, understand that you're probably going to try to live off 20 cents on every potential dollar if that's all you're doing. But so the digital marketplace is interesting, but that sets aside and forgets about webcomics, right? Setting up a WordPress blog and then creating your audience that way is how a lot of tremendously successful folks have gotten going. And so trying to figure out what's going to work for you, when you talk about creating that audience and having an audience for when you're ready to have your work, have that audience built before you try and sell it. Well, you can go ahead and with a web strip, you can go ahead and create content and an audience at the same time. And as that builds, then the question is, how do you monetize it? So we've looked at all of those things, but ultimately, when you were working in comics, which for the most part is one of the most collaborative creative efforts that you can possibly imagine. And in some ways it's more collaborative than making a movie. Video games are probably, possibly maybe the only more collaborative effort. But when you're in that collaborative environment, and they're setting aside auteur works, but when you're in that collaborative environment, you've got to figure out how you're going to work together to get this thing out and, get through distribution. And if you're going to look at just digital, then, you need to make sure that the folks that you're working with are on board for that.
Well, I've got a question. I don't mean to have Geoff dominate, but I'm particularly interested in the digital distribution, especially when it comes to the audience. And as independent creators who don't have really a mass distribution method otherwise, we joke, again, going back to Troops, we made it thinking it was going to be a glorified wedding video. In the days when things were on VHS and you had to make a copy of a copy of a copy and hand it, literally had to hand it in physically from one person to the other. And this is what the two guys named Trey and Matt had done around Fox Kids at the time. My friends and I worked, and they did this horribly funny, horribly obscene short video called Spirit of Christmas with these little high-pitched chipmunky-voiced characters and round heads, giant eyes, and they ended up getting a lot of attention that way and ended up with a deal for a little show called South Park. And we thought this was their show coming in '98, and this is spring of '97. We thought, we got to pull a Spirit of Christmas, something short, funny, we can put on VHS tapes and hand it around person to person and get some attention. Well, thankfully for us, the internet came along, and it was still dial-up again, but we didn't have to actually physically, hey, check this out, hand it to people. There are strangers all over the world. My husband was one. When I first met him, he goes, "Oh my God, I remember downloading that thing all night long." The phone, someone would call. But that idea that I think for these folks that even just to get the attention, not necessarily of an audience, of millions, but of you or me, or that we would find these things online ourselves. Do you think that it's, where am I going with this question? On your behalf, do you think that, and anybody can answer this, that it's worth their while to actually publish a physical object to hand out person to person at Comic-Con or something like that? Or is it better to concentrate their efforts online and just try to get attention, or is there just too much noise now online?
I personally don't think so. I think you should still publish a printed book because I do a graphic novel, and so I can get it in libraries, I get it in a lot of bookstores, and my book is multicultural, but the lead character is African American. The one thing I found is that if you were to go to a black bookstore, there's no place for comic books because first of all, there aren't any black comic books, so to say. They come and go, and then where do they put them? But a graphic novel, there's manga. There's so many different sections that are like books and like minds that can find places to go.
Do you physically yourself go to the comic book stores? Do you have?
Yes.
Wow, okay. So you didn't. Wow.
But I did Diamond, and they distributed it. But in the neighborhood of, in LA, I went around to the different and gave a free book to encourage them to order it.
When you were in the position of the people in the audience, you literally knocked on doors.
Yeah, and said, "This is the book. It's in Diamond. It's going to be coming out. Maybe you consider ordering."
But it was in Diamond. I guess that's my question. If you're coming up, you don't even have access to Diamond to have them distribute things for you.
Well, anybody can have access to Diamond. You just have to submit to them.
If they accept it, that's not true. They accept it. I went door to door. I went 70 stores in LA. Like at some point, you get a little bit too big to like do that. Like at this point, like I can't call comic book stores like one at a time, because if I sell a book for 50% of what I make for it, they buy one book. Like what am I going to do? Go and hand deliver books to 70 stores? At some point you get too big, but at the beginning, like these are all going to be exclusive for comic book stores that let us sign.
And one thing you can do with the comic book stores, which they will do, because they're only going to, like, they'll order 10 extra Spider-Mans because every 10 years Sony's going to remake that same bad movie. But they will order just enough of your book to sell it because they have to pay up front, and that's the thing they don't tell you about comic book shops. But what you can do is do a signing there, and even if so you can bring your books, you can be there a couple hours, you can do some signings. They'll always be supportive of stuff like that. At least the ones I've gone to.
Excellent.
Especially if you're they will consign your books too, and
so
I mean if you're okay.
Not from a big city like LA, and you have your local comic book store that you hang out in anyway.
Oh yeah.
You could approach them directly and say, I've self-published this book. I'd be willing to do a signing, that maybe they could help promote through their promotion they already do to promote their.
They usually buy a couple of copies afterwards too. But here's the thing: is they're not gonna publish something or put it on their store if it's embarrassing. So you got to make a good product first.
Got it.
Well, I mean, to answer your question more directly, you do something if you have a business reason to. So if you think I can print 2,000 copies of this book, and I can sell through them at conventions. I can sell them to these 6 local shops in my area or whatever, blah, blah, and you think you can make money on that specific business property, then that's fine. I hate carrying things, and I know I'm terrible at it, so I've learned not to have as much physical product. I'm like, that's why I try to go through publishers, that's why I try to do other things. And with the current project I'm working on, which is a webcomic called Inner Project Torrent for this Project Wildfire book, we are giving it away for free at first. We're going to do all 44 pages of it free online, and then we're going to take those down and sell those digitally on Gumroad, on Comixology, and so on and so forth, as black and white. And then we're going to try to crowdfund a color edition of it. So our business plan is laid out with it, and you'll get a printed version of it in the end if you support the crowdfunding and so on and so forth. We haven't decided. We'll probably go Kickstarter because you've pretty much sold me on it. But he really likes Indiegogo. But anyway, he likes the name. But so I've got a business plan for when I will get to print and why I will get to print. So if you've got a reason and if you've got a plan and you can hit all the marks to make that plan, then go for it. But if you're just sitting at home like, I need to have a book in the store, that's the probably not going to work.
Another thing to piggyback on all of that is not only to whom is the book being sold with immediacy once you get to that whole printing end of it all. A lot of you, when Charlotte asked why you're here and what media you hope to get into, said all of it. There's a thing, I'm not going to trash the entertainment industry too much since I still have to work in it, but people want to have something that, a graphic novel is ideal for telling your story if you're going to talk to someone making a decision in an executive capacity. And they don't want to go online and look at your thing and scroll through it. And they don't want floppies because it can be misplaced or whatever. They want a graphic novel. And
You can
so-
prove sales on those too.
Yes.
When you're going to talk to somebody, you can prove sales. You can say, I said 1,000, so you should look at this because not only is it a good book, not only does it look awesome,
yes.
but I can prove sales.
Yes, and that means I'm going to bring a market with me to you and make our collaboration even more profitable, potentially more profitable, and I am more attractive to you for that exact reason.
Because the chance of it failing, which is it's not the chance of success that the executives care about.
Yes.
You guys can. It's reducing the failure that they really care about. Because
Yes.
you can't prove success, but you can certainly mitigate failure in a
Yes.
very easy way.
Reduce risk on their
And,
part.
and they want to have something in their hand that they can pass around or whatever. And so that's another reason why at some point in time, if you're thinking multimedia, print is something that you'll encounter, and there are ways to mitigate those costs. And go into that in detail.
I was going to say, if I can jump in without getting to the specifics on the mitigating the cost, but when you talked about having a hard copy of something that's your work rather than even having it in digital format, and maybe Geoff can back this up because I don't know about it in modern terms, that also helps you retain some ownership. Like if you go in with an idea, a pitch, a project, whatever, to a large company, you don't have as much copyright leverage in this case. If you have a book and artwork, these are the designs, this is the character, this is the story, and it's published, you are in a much stronger position to, even with a DC Marvel, any big, you know, if there's somebody's going to make it into a giant movie, whatever, you now are the author of something as opposed to, I'm sorry.
I can correct this. I think by law, you have to sell over 2,000 copies. And what you have to sell,
Thank you.
once you sell over 2,000 copies, tell me if I'm wrong.
No.
Is that just hearsay?
No?
Okay.
No. You own the copyright in something at the moment that your creative efforts become fixed in a tangible medium. And so if you're working on a computer and you press a key on that script, you own the copyright in that script when that appears visibly on the screen because it's fixed in the hard drive of the computer.
Wow.
You own the copyright in it.
But then
all of these other issues go to how easily you can prove it, and then the issue of whether or not you've registered for a copyright, and you can register an unpublished work as a for copyright. The registration gives you certain rights with respect to your ability to get your attorney's fees and statutory damages, depending upon when you've done the registration with respect to the publication of it.
Well, because you probably know this better than me, then you can probably explain it. In Hollywood, when they buy a script, when you sign your contract, there's a thing called certificate of authorization, and basically, in layman terms, it's you're turning your copyright over to them.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
Everything's
no.
negotiable,
Yeah, that's
but you're
why I
right.
thought-
In a
maybe I'm
beginner
wrong, but that's why
position.
I thought it was the 2,000 thing. Then they're just licensing it from you. But that's what someone had told me about. So, yeah.
If we could, I'd love to have people start asking questions. Thank you. You saw
could
the-
I
the
also
sign,
add
and
just
that's our-
one more thing
Oh,
to
please
this
do.
point?
Let's go ahead and talk while people line up and.
I just wanted to mention something to Eric. It's not really so much copyright that becomes an issue, it's trademark and registered marks. And those are what they use to control the image and there's the character mark for a logo. You only need to publish one issue of one copy of something with a logo to have an official trademark. Now you can register a trademark afterwards, but as long as it's considered an active mark, then you have control.
Is that correct?
That's not how you get trademark, right?
Well, no,
Thank you.
No,
let Geoff please.
copy will not-
We want you to have correct information from
Make
this
it
panel.
possible for you to get a trademark. You have to have recurring use in commercial commerce. In interstate commerce, if it's federal or if it's a state one, it can be totally intrastate, but it has to be recurring use. So, but
There's a specific
publishing one
difference.
copy doesn't do it.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to if you've got another question, go ahead and get in line, but I'm glad you brought
Niall
that
had
up.
something to say before.
Do you?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nilah. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one more thing. My webcomic is available online, and I also sell it at conventions because people who are reading online aren't necessarily going to the same conventions you are, and people that you meet at conventions don't necessarily read online. So for me, it's about reaching a larger audience.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
To me, it's about also changing, when you talk about narrowing your focus, right? So talk about, okay, so everyone in here wants to write a script, right? Some people will write a script. Maybe let's say 10%. Then some
we
people
don't know what the skill set is.
Then some people will finish. Some people will finish it. Then people will edit the script. Then people will hire an artist. Then people will finish the thing. So you're narrowing the focus. So by having a print book, it puts you in another narrowing category where many people who even made a comic won't have a print book. To go back to the actual question. So if your goal is to break away from the pack and get actual
yourself.
Eyeballs,
Create some kind of focus.
Yes, you want to focus so that you're not one of 7 billion, and then you're not one of 7 million, and you're not one of 7,000. You're one of a very minor minority who will print a book, come to a convention, and then have something that looks professional to sell. There's very, very few people, even though there's thousands of people downstairs exhibiting. That is very few comparatively to the 55% of people that say they have a book in them. I'm sorry. I know he has a question.
No, that's all right. I just want to make sure we get to any questions, and if there's anybody else who is shy about it, come up and whisper it to me, because I don't want to get us deluged at the end. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I have written a comic book, and I have a series of them that I am writing, and I want to hire an artist, and I already have some artists that I want to use. And what I'd like to know is kind of what the cost, geez, how short do you have to be? What is the, what's a typical cost per page? And I know there's the inker, and then there's the colorist, and then there's the letterer. And then how do you work that deal? Is it just straight buyout? I mean, is it, how does that work?
Permutations. A lot of different permutations.
For my book, my artist.
Can you give a range?
Yes. I think it's 150 a page. I think is what it was. But he pencils and inks it. So it's but one thing you want to do is when you pick that artist, you want to sign a contract that they work for hire. Because the moment they draw it, if you don't have a work for hire contract, they co-own it with you.
Is that always the case, Robert? Because for some people, if you're a very successful, let's say you can only hire $50 a page, and that person loves it. They might do $50 a page, but they'll take 50% of the ownership. Exactly. So part of it is in equity, and then part of it is in sales. But one of the things people don't realize when they're hiring an artist is you're not just hiring the art, the proficiency of an artist. So for me, it's $100 a page. If I can get $100 a page, it's good. But when you hire more, you're also getting their audience. You're also getting their ability to go to conventions. You're also getting a lot of things. If you hire an international artist in Argentina, where a lot of my artists are from, they have almost no chance of ever supporting you at a convention, a live event, or in an American audience. If you hire an American artist, especially someone who goes to conventions a lot, you're going to have them on this panel. Maybe if me and Rob were working together on a book, we were both
with
on
the
this
table down in Artist
Right,
Alley
exactly.
with your book sitting there to show their art.
They would come to Artist Alley and pick up his book, and at the same time, I would send them to his booth, and they would pick up. They worked on stuff where people are coming, say, "Oh, we want to get your signature on it because we bought this book at that other booth, and we're over here to see." Yeah, and guess what? We're working on issue 2. And there's a lot of cross-pollination available to you under those circumstances.
And I think it's smart what they both said about going in on a 50-50 deal. But you have to realize if you go on a 50-50 deal, you still should get a contract with an out, because there's so many people that have gone a 50-50 deal and the artist disappears, and then you try and go get another artist, but now you can't because
you're contracted.
I'm not doing a 50-50
so you still.
I'm just going to pay him to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the same thing that you
that's
do.
work for hire, and you need to pay more for work for hire if
Because you're going to gain
because
ownership.
you're telling me I want you to divest yourself of all.
Oh well, I'm not necessarily saying
but
that
when you
would
get
give some
equity-
kind of residuals or something like that. I'm just saying that they're not going to be,
So I
It's
always
not
do art out.
residuals, it's part ownership.
Yeah. So
When
they
they
own
design
the
your
book.
characters,
So
they are part creator in your property.
Yeah, but I think I've already, and not in a bad way, but for example, I had an artist, and this was years ago because I'm busy doing my business, but I hired an artist who did 6 great sketches, and now It's just he's too busy to do it. He's gone into another business altogether, and he wants to, but it's like, okay, so I've been waiting 6 months for a page, and it's like I can't.
Yeah. So when you make a company, when you own a business, like let's say a startup business, and you give someone equity in the company, you get an out clause if they haven't completed if they haven't completed something in 90 days. So I believe that's what you're saying is even if you give equity, they have to finish the book. And in my contracts, it's always if you don't finish the book, I can cancel you, but I have to pay you for the pages and the time you went at this rate. So there's an out clause
Should there
in
have
the
been
contract.
any at that point? Yeah.
And if you had to be honest, if you've had somebody do 6 pages of your thing, you should get a contract with him.
Right, and in fact, I just had 6 characters drawn. This individual character.
Yeah, they're going to change
Not-
next time.
not-
They're going
not
to change
storytelling.
by the final artist, so that's really useless. You got 6 useless sketches.
Right, no, I realize. No, I realize.
yeah.
But it's just a start.
Sorry, I see there's a person behind
Yeah,
you.
let's
so
go ahead
can
and
we-
I'm sorry, that was an excellent question, or series of questions. I'm glad you asked.
Because you have to consider all that.
When you're looking at this with respect to the contract, if you've hired someone and you paid them to do certain work, when it comes to copyright ownership and ownership of the intellectual property and what you're trying to build, you need to make sure that you have a written agreement that clearly spells out what is going on and who is going to own that. Because the law has certain defaults in place, and if you don't spell it out clearly, the law is going to fill that in. And I'll just tell everybody sitting here that in my experience, that leads to a decade or 12 years of litigation if what you ever create ends up actually being successful. So you want to make sure that there is a written contract that very clearly spells it out, because what you think the ownership status is probably isn't the ownership status. If you've hired someone to do 6 concept sketches, they may co-own that unless you have a contract that clearly states that they don't.
And I know those of us in the creative end of things and not on the business end don't like to have to worry about those kind of things, and let's just write this and make it a great story and make... We're all grown-ups, so we're all, professionals doesn't mean only business suits and, sitting at the uncomfortable desks. It's ripped jeans and T-shirts and sitting on the floor while you do. I mean, it's still professional in that we're going to have to pay taxes. You have to think about those things in the real world, so I'm glad we brought
Was
it
it
up.
McFarlane and Millar that had the problem with Angela way back in the day?
It was McFarlane and Gaiman.
Gaiman, that's
That
right. That's a
lawsuit,
Gaiman.
I was in that for
I
12
figured it
years.
would be, that's why. I mentioned
It was 12 years long before they ultimately settled that one.
Okay, next question, please.
Okay.
This is a familiar face,
Hi.
friend of mine.
Hi, Charlotte.
The young writers in the young writers group that meets at my house all these years.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I have a background in a number of different media, and one of the things that I was looking at is making the transition. I'm doing mostly television animation, writing scripts right now, and I want to make the jump into comics, and I'm wondering about formatting and resources online. I need to teach myself how to do it right because I have a project that I would like to do.
It's funny you mentioned that. I actually just answered this question for another animation writer that was looking and getting into comics. There is a comic book script database online that has a lot of examples from both current comics and classic ones that you can look at. Likewise, I went to, there's a writer named Christopher Priest. He had a panel yesterday. Was it yesterday?
Yeah,
or
it was
today?
yesterday.
The days melt together. Anyway, and he was a longtime editor at Marvel Comics and at DC Comics, and he's got examples of his scripting there as well. I learned a lot of very, very important things from his, like number the dialogue thing so the letterer knows which order they're supposed to go in, and so. Or some of my screenwriting friends said, always make sure you put interior day or exterior day so they understand, the colorist understands how the lighting is supposed to go, so on and so forth. If you look for comic book samples online, you'll find a number of them. A lot of writers are willing to put them up. This comic book script database, which you can, if you just Google those 4 words, it'll pop right up.
Script database?
We'll have tons of examples of things. What you'll have to do, though, is you'll have to reverse engineer them. You have to read the scripts and then think, what is this doing that I want to do? Because the script is not, you're not writing to the reader, you're writing a love letter to the artist. The artist is
To
the
make their
director of
life easier.
photography. He
Excellent
conveys
point.
it to the audience. So you have to communicate to that one, or that art team rather, because the letterer is part of it, the colorist is part of it, and then they have to carry your message on out to the audience. And that is a it's a complicated process. I would
Learning
recommend doing a lot of them before you try to, do it professionally, because the Gladwell rule, 10,000 hours to master anything.
And then there's a lot of trust in a lot of these artist teams, so you have to know how long that team's been working together, because a lot of times there are artists who go, just make it action-y here, because they've been working together for 20 issues, and like you can't do that on your first script.
Okay, thank you.
Wait,
More
I have a question for
specificity,
you.
the better.
You said you wrote. What did you say you were writing originally?
I'm focusing on TV animation scripts.
So you've written TV animation scripts?
I do not have anything produced, no.
'Cause
I'm just focusing on building my portfolio and getting feedback from people who know better than I do.
Oh, okay.
And we've got a couple more brave souls in line
I know.
behind you, and I'm sorry, I want to move things along just so.
I was going to say this. Sometimes scripts in script format, like TV, movie, is pretty much easy for artists to follow, because the things are interior, exterior, there's detail, it's indented, dialogue's indented, and it's in order.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. So,
Okay.
so even
Thank
if you
you.
don't
Yeah,
have
I-
access to a comic book
Yeah.
script
And Final
format,
Draft Pro,
Yeah, I
a
use
format,
Final Draft, and I just,
especially animation with a more descriptive format,
Okay.
is excellent. Thank you for
I'll
saying
look into
that.
it, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Hey guys,
Yes.
and ladies, everybody.
What's up, Robin?
Hello, Robin.
My name's Joshua. I'm an independent filmmaker from Long Beach.
Excellent.
My question was regarding diversity in all of its forms. How can you give any advice on how, whether it's writing or directing or just creating, how can we promote diversity, and also what are some, I guess you could say, piece of advice to help write more diverse characters? Is it talking, researching? Is it collaborating with diverse people? How can I get a better sense of being able to write more diverse characters?
Wow, that's a complicated question. That's not, I can jump
Sorry.
in. No, it's
I'll start-
excellent.
I'll
It's
start
just,
from
that's a
the-
whole panel unto itself.
I'll start
really.
from the second one. Research is vital, because when I needed to write something set on a Greek island, and I needed to be able to understand the way people were there, I spent weeks emailing with the director of the tourist bureau on this Greek island of Smee, back and forth, emailed, what about this? What do they do when this happens? And when it rains, what do you guys do now? Blah, blah, blah. So when I sent her the final product, she was like, it's like you live here. And I've never been to the Greek island of Smee. So research is very important. However, we have certain cultural programmings that make us believe certain things. I remember at Marvel, a writer was Christopher Priest. He was talking about in his panel that he is black. He says, your characters, that's not the way black people talk. And he's like, I'm standing right here, literally, seriously. So there are stereotypes that are in people's minds that may not fit the research that you're doing. I'd always err on the side of the research. In terms of how to do it and how to promote it, you just have to put this work out in the world. One of my friends, Michael Young, he does a podcast called Lay Ill Kid, because he says, I wasn't seeing the commentary I wanted to see, so I had to start making it.
Excellent.
You have to put out, the works that this man has done, because the book he's got out now is dope. What I want to talk about Soul Sorcerer, because you got me excited with that. He had this book before that called Prophecy of the Soul Sorcerer, and I was reading it like, what is this? Oh my God. And I was like, maybe I could do something. And now I do. So.
And now you do it.
this is going to sound crazy, but you're a diverse person. Tell your story.
Yeah.
Tell the
Tell
story
your
that's
personal
closest to
story,
you.
and it will be.
As anybody, no matter what nationality, sex, race, whatever you are, your story is unique because it's yours. Tell that story first.
Okay.
That's a good way.
We've got time just for a quick question, this person in line. If you've got, thank you very much. It's a very complex question.
Okay. I'm a little taller. So, basically, I started working on all my stuff about a couple of years ago. I actually printed my own comic, but once I got it done, there wasn't much feedback because it's already done, right? So people don't want to give you feedback on done product. But then someone actually spent more time on it, and I don't know if I should just get an editor or what I should do from there. Maybe add some pages on it to clear up some things because it's not always clear to everyone. Any advice on that?
Definitely get an editor.
Okay.
Do you read a lot of webcomics? At all?
Webcomics?
Yeah, do you read like comics online?
Not too much.
All right, so I highly recommend you go to like some of the most successful webcomics and read their first page and their 10th page and their sometimes 100 and sometimes 500th page, and they're all kind of crappy, frankly. At some point, like Penny Arcade is like awful. XKCD is terrible until it gets. have you read the first 50 or to 100
You're talking
ones?
about the arc of
so
improvement.
you can get better. Also, there's no reason for you to commit to making a book if you're not 100%. Most people think that they want to make their dream project first, and that's the worst advice you can possibly take. Like, make something that you don't care about first, so you can learn and grow.
As the learning.
Yeah, so you can learn and grow,
experiment,
and then when you're ready to do the project you love, hey, you're ready for it.
I think that's a fantastic note to end on. I want to thank everybody who was brave enough to ask us questions, and thank you all for coming. This is fantastic.
The Business of Art is my podcast, just FYI. Thank you.
Great job,
I
you
hate
guys.
to dominate these things, but
I was really worried when I saw the size
all
of
of
the
the
panel. Like,
things,
how are we all gonna
just
get
had
a
so
chance
much to say on all of it.